Well, hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Outdoors today, it's a nice overcast day. It's going to be in the low 30s today. A little bit of a drop of rain earlier that wasn't forecast, but anyway, it's quite pleasant out here, so I thought I'd sit out here and record this one. So today I'm going to talk about my two Nikon digital SLRs. People who look at this channel and look at my blogs would think perhaps I'm predominantly a Pentax person. In many ways that's true, but most of my Pentax enthusiasm was in the film camera days. I do have the Pentax ISTD, which I've reviewed recently. I also have a Pentax KX digital SLR and the Pentax KR digital SLR, but I don't go any higher in standards than that at this stage with those, even though I would perhaps like to. But I'm also got other cameras. My main go-to cameras when I'm going out on a regular basis or on holidays is probably my Canon 600D and my Canon 700D. But I still love using my Pentax digital SLRs. I have two of them. One is the D70s and one is the D60. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the both of them. This is not going to be a very highfalutin technical expose of that's a good word for a photography thing, isn't it? Of these two cameras. You can read all about that on the internet and download manuals and all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to talk about what I find good about these two cameras and how I got them. The D70s belonged to my eldest son, who lives overseas these days, and he didn't want to take it with me, so he said I could have it, which was very gracious of him. So I have the D70s, which he used to use quite a bit. He uses a Nikon D90 most of the time these days, when he's not using his phone, I think. And my Nikon D60, a friend of mine who was quite ill for some time, was a camera enthusiast, an enthusiast about all sorts of things, including model trains and photographies and hi-fi and music and whatever. But John was a keen photographer, and he had, and unfortunately he died a few years ago now of cancer. But he was always interested in his cameras and was even thinking about buying a new camera not long before he was going to die, and he knew he was dying soon. So he was an enthusiast. So anyway, he was wanting to know what he was going to do with his two digital SLRs that he had. One was probably a Nikon 850 or something like that, or maybe something about that quality anyway, and the other one was the Nikon D60. And he ended up I ended up buying the D60 off of him, which was a cheaper camera than the other one, which was a more professional one. But I love the Nikon D60. So when I use my Nikon cameras, sometimes I take them both out together, and more often than not though, when I was starting to go through my archives, I found that the Nikon D60 is the one that I probably use the most. Swapping over from Canon menus on cameras and also the Pentax menus on cameras, I found it a bit tricky to start with, but after a while I looked at, I've got a manual for the D60, and I looked up online instructions about the D70s. After a while I got used to them, and now I can use them reasonably well. I don't pretend to use all the functions that are on both of these cameras, but I just use the basics pretty much, and I've been able to navigate through the menu system reasonably okay for what I need anyway. So let's just have a look at them first, and I'll talk about them as I go. Where are we? This one here is the D70s, and the D70s is the same apparently as the D70. I think probably the only difference is that the flash sync speed on this one is 1/500th of a second, whereas a bit less on the D70. And so a flash sync of 1/500th of a second, very useful in the days of film. But now of course you can get these flashes that give you flash sync at all speeds, just about high speed flash sync. But this is a nice chunky solid camera. Hasn't got a huge screen on the background. Of course you can view through the optical viewfinder as well, which I prefer optical viewfinders to live viewfinders on the back. Both these cameras don't have video, and I find that refreshing because, as I said in one of my previous videos, I can't be bothered with shooting video a lot of the time on my SLRs. I prefer a standalone video camera. I recently reviewed the Pentax IST-D. This one here, you might recall that I pointed out that on the back of the IST-D there's a rotating dial there, and on the front there's a rotating dial there. Well, this one here, the D70s, has the same system that the Pentax IST-D does. Now, this camera is a 6 megapixel camera, but even so, you can still print pretty good enlargements with this. What else can I tell you about it? You can adjust the viewfinder to suit your eyes, of course. It does take compact flash cards, compact flash cards, not the SD cards. The other one takes the SD cards. One of the things I've noticed with this camera is I recently turned it on the other day to check it out, and there was an error came up saying you need to format the card or the card's not formatted. And I noticed that that's a fairly common thing that seems to be happening from time to time with this camera, and I looked it up on the internet and other people have had the same problem. I took that card out, I played around with it, which it wasn't allowing me, the information was still on the card, but it wasn't letting me shoot. So I took that out and put another card in, which I had, and that's fine. So these take the compact flash cards. Some of the modern cameras still take compact flash cards. So that's one of the little tricks to learn from it. It's a beautiful camera. It's got all the usual settings: manual, aperture, priority, shutter priority, program, auto, and different symbols, of course, for the different action type, preset conditions. The ISO goes up. I read a report on this one. It's a Ken Rockwell report that I downloaded off the internet, and he talks about how this particular camera here shoots pretty well at the high ISO end, and it goes up to about 1600 ISO, I think, and you don't get too much grain compared to other like film cameras at that rate in the old days. So this is a nice camera. The thing I had to learn, of course, with Nikons was that the actual lens screws up in the opposite direction. The Pentax and the Canons and everything else, you've got to put this one on anti-clockwise, whereas the others go off the other way. So I didn't know that when I first started using Nikons, but it's a beautiful camera. One of the interesting things I've found with both this camera and the other one is that you can still use a Nikon, like Pentax, are pretty good at having backward compatibility. So for instance, I have two Nikon film cameras. Perhaps I'll talk about them in another review, but I have a F601S, I think, and an F4014S, I think, both film cameras and both autofocus. So but I've got a few lenses that go with those cameras, and these old lenses, like this one here, is a I'll just take the lens cap off. This is a 35 to 70 millimeter zoom, f3.3 to f4.5 range, and I've found that using these, I can use these cameras on these lenses, these old lenses, on both these cameras quite well, and they work quite well. Also, you get modern flashes, of course, but one thing I did buy when I got both these cameras was a little Nikon speed light like this one. It's a SB300. It cost me quite a bit, even though it was second hand when I bought it, and I thought, well, I need an extra flash. I didn't have a flash. There's a flash hot shoe on here, and I bought this, but then afterwards I thought, well, maybe it's not really much better than the pop-up flash in the camera. The only difference is that you can actually tilt it upwards. So I wouldn't think you really need to have that one if you've got another flash. So there you go. That's the F70s, D70s, sorry. Now both these lenses on here, I'll show you the Nikon D60 perhaps, and I'll come back and talk about the lenses. So the Nikon D60 is this one here. Now I've got a big lens on this. This is a Nikon DX autofocus S Nikkor, 55 to 300 millimeter, 4.5 to 5.6 G ED, something or other dispersion that stands for. I've got 3 digital lenses that go with these cameras, and all of them have got the inbuilt vibration reduction on them, and you can turn that on or off, and auto and manual focus. And I've found that these 3 lenses that I've got are really sharp, and I've taken lots of good photos with them, with birds and also my grandson playing sport and things like that, and family shots and general scenery. And one of the things I noticed once I got these 3 lenses, I've got that one, plus this one is a 55 to 200 zoom lens, and once again it's got the vibration reduction. It's an ED lens, f4 to f5.6, and this one on here is 18 to 55 vibration reduction, f3.5 to f5.6. What I've noticed when I started using these cameras and these lenses is that I've never been one to get really expensive lenses. These lenses, this one, the big one here, I picked up second-hand in a camera shop at a really good price, and it's in probably mint condition, as are these lenses, which came with John's D60 camera, and they're pretty much in mint condition, but they're really sharp. And I've never made a point of buying really sharp lenses, always thinking it was more about the person holding the camera than how good the lens was and how expensive it was. But I must say, when I started using these Nikon lenses, that they are really sharp, and one of the things that it's made me aware of is that the only main thing that I really want to get to add to my terrible collection, huge collection of cameras and whatever, is a really good big birding lens, because I tend to use these shorter lenses for birding, and I get good results, but I would like to have a really nice big one to take bird photos. And what was the other thing I want to use it for? The other thing was a movie camera, that's right. The other thing I would like to get hold of is an actual dedicated movie camera as against an SLR that takes movies, because I'm a firm believer in that, as I might have said before. So that's the 2 cameras. The Nikon D60, I find this a bit more friendly to use than the D70s. It's nice and lightweight, and it's got a slightly bigger screen on the back. The menu system's quite good. It's only got the 1 wheel on the back, not the 2 on the front. It's got all the same settings pretty much, and all in all, this is probably my go-to Nikon digital SLR, but quite often I'll take my camera bag that's got both of these in the bag, and I'll go somewhere and I'll say, today I'm just going to use my Nikons, and I'll take both of them with me. But I find I end up shooting this one, the D60, more than the other one. The other thing, apart from the backward compatibility of the lenses, also this is an old style Nikon Speedlight SB22. This one is. I bought this somewhere on the way, probably to use with my f401S or the f601S, the film cameras, but it works fine. Put it on these cameras and the flash works fine, and I tried it out the other day, I can get through the lens metering, and it works brilliantly. And this has got bounce flash, of course. It hasn't got tilt and swivel, but it's a nice little little flash, and it fits on the top, and that's really good. So there you go. That's my Nikon outfit. I don't know what else I can tell you about them. This one, of course, the D60 takes the SD cards. There it is, just pops out there, the little SD cards, and that's very convenient, of course. The compact flash ones might be a little bit more harder to come by these days, but I've still got a good collection of those from when I was using them in my Canon 400D and also in my Pentax IST D, because they used to take the compact flash cards as well. What I'm intending to do is I'm going to I went through all my archives to try and identify a lot of the shots that I've been taking over the last few years since I've had these cameras, and so I've partitioned off the D60 shots and the D70s shots, and I'm going to do probably maybe 2 segments on my blog, which will feature quite a few photos that I've identified as ones I really like, and I'll put a link after I've posted this up, and after I've done that blog, those blog posts, I'll put a link so you can actually see some of the samples of what I've taken with these. So there you go. That's the Nikon D60 and the Nikon D70s. I love these cameras, and they're a bit older, but they still do the job. One's 10 megapixel, one's 6 megapixel. I meant to bring out, but the trouble is I'm going to interrupt the video if I do this, but I printed off a big A3 size print from, I think it was something I took from the it was from the D60 I took, and that's beautiful. And so you can get at 10 megapixel and 6 megapixel. If you want to do prints, you can still print nice enlargements, and of course, you know, they translate brilliantly to the internet and all your social media accounts and all that jazz. So there you go. Thanks for watching again today. That's my Nikons. I'll do one later on sometime on my Nikon film cameras, and I've still got a lot of other brands that I can talk about as well, mainly in the film camera side. I've basically got a couple of Canon digital SLRs. I think I've already talked about my little compact digital cameras. A couple of Canons, these couple of Nikon digital SLRs, and I've got 3 of the Pentax digital SLRs. I think that's as much as I've got in the digital side with SLR cameras. So everything else I've got, which is considerable, they're mainly film cameras. So thanks again for watching. Like if you want to, subscribe if you like, and I'll see you next time.